My name is Danielle, 36 years old, sitting at my kitchen table with coffee burns still stinging on my cheek. I watched my husband Marcus calmly eating his breakfast, as if he had not just thrown scalding coffee in my face moments ago. The credit card in my pocket felt like a weapon I had finally learned how to use. After 12 years of fear, something inside me had shifted completely. That moment of humiliation had transformed into the strangest sensation. I was not afraid anymore. I was finally awake. Before I share what happened that morning and how it changed everything, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit like and subscribe to hear how one terrible moment became my path to freedom. Looking at our life from the outside, anyone would have thought Marcus and I had achieved the American dream. We lived in a stunning 5-bedroom colonial house in suburban Philadelphia, complete with the white picket fence and manicured lawn that screamed success. Marcus, at 42, was everything society told women they should want in a husband: tall, handsome, in that distinguished way that made other women envious at parties, a successful corporate lawyer who earned well into 6 figures. We had been married for 12 years, and though we had no children, Marcus always said it was not the right time, yet that we needed to be more financially stable first, which seemed absurd given our lifestyle. I had been a marketing director at a pharmaceutical company when we met, earning $90,000 a year and loving my career. I was good at my job, really good, with a team of 15 people under me and executives who valued my opinion. But 5 years into our marriage, Marcus started suggesting that work was stressing me out too much. He pointed out every time I came home, tired every weekend, I had to work every evening conference call that interrupted dinner. "You do not need this stress, honey," he would say, rubbing my shoulders while I reviewed reports. "I make more than enough for both of us. Why do not you take a break, focus on making our home beautiful, maybe take up some hobbies you have been wanting to try?" The suggestion became more persistent over months, until it felt less like concern and more like pressure. He would get sulky when I had work events, angry when business trips were scheduled, cold when promotions were discussed. Eventually, keeping the job became harder than leaving it, so I resigned, telling myself it was temporary, that I would go back when I was ready. That was 7 years ago. The control started so gradually I did not see it happening. First, it made sense to have joint accounts since I was not working. Marcus handled all the finances because he was better with numbers, he said. The credit cards were in his name for better rewards points. He gave me cash for groceries and household expenses, always asking for receipts to track our spending. If I needed something beyond the usual weekly allowance, I had to explain why, justify the expense, sometimes even show him what I wanted to buy online first for his approval. My friends started noticing my absence before I did. Rachel, my best friend since college, would text about lunch plans I could never seem to make. "Sorry. Marcus and I have plans," I would reply, even when those plans were just him wanting me home. Sarah from book club wondered why I stopped coming. "Marcus thinks I am out too much," I would explain, making excuses that sounded reasonable at the time. My sister Jennifer started complaining that I never called anymore. When I did manage to see family, Marcus would text constantly asking when I would be home, who was there, what we were talking about. He had opinions about everyone in my life. Rachel was a bad influence because she was divorced. Sarah was toxic because she drank wine at book club. My sister was jealous of our success. My mother was too controlling. One by one, he found reasons why every relationship in my life was unhealthy, why I would be better off focusing on us, on our marriage, on our home. And somehow, over the years, I let those relationships fade, telling myself I was choosing my marriage, being a good wife. 6 months ago, everything started to change when I was cleaning out the home office and found bank statements hidden in a file marked Tax Documents 2015. My hands shook as I read through them, seeing transfer after transfer from an account I did not recognize. It took me a moment to realize what I was looking at. My grandmother had left me an inheritance when she died 3 years ago, $200,000 that Marcus had said would be put into our joint investment account for our future. But these statements showed every penny moved into an account with only his name on it. I sat on the office floor for an hour, those papers in my hands, understanding finally hitting me like physical pain. He had stolen from me while looking me in the eye and calling it our money. All those times I had to ask for $20 for a haircut, $50 for a birthday gift for my sister, defending every purchase while he had hundreds of thousands of my money sitting in his private account. That was the day I started planning. I could not confront him, not yet. I knew him well enough to know he would deny it, gaslight me, maybe even destroy the evidence. So I took photos of every document, every page, and stored them in a cloud account he did not know about. Then I did something I had not done in 7 years. I reached out to Sarah. We met at a small cafe 30 minutes from my house where no one would recognize me. Sarah listened as I told her everything, her face cycling through shock, anger, and determination. She did not judge me for staying so long or ask why I had not left sooner. She just asked what I needed. What I needed was a credit card in my name, but Marcus monitored our mail obsessively. Sarah offered her address, and 3 weeks later, I had my first piece of financial independence in 7 years, hidden in a tampon box in our bathroom, the one place Marcus would never look. I started documenting everything, every controlling comment recorded on an old phone I said I had thrown away, every bruise photographed, though there were not many, because Marcus was too smart to leave marks often, every threatening text screenshot and backed up. I opened my own bank account online, paperless statements only, and started moving tiny amounts from the grocery money, $5 here, 10 there. Nothing he would notice. The morning that changed everything started like any other. Marcus woke at 6:30 sharp, immediately reaching for my phone on my nightstand to check my messages, emails, and call log. He scrolled through everything while I pretended to sleep, a routine we had done so many times it felt normal. Satisfied that I had not communicated with anyone he had not approved, he handed it back and went to shower. I made breakfast exactly how he liked it. Eggs Benedict with hollandaise sauce from scratch sourdough, toast from the bakery, he preferred fresh squeezed orange juice, and his coffee with precisely 2 sugars and a splash of half and half. The table was set with the good plates, cloth napkins, fresh flowers from the garden, everything perfect the way he expected it. He came down at 7:15 dressed in his $1,000 suit cologne, applied with precision. He sat at the head of the table, unfolding his napkin while I served him, then sitting across from him with my own plate. We ate in silence for a few minutes before he spoke. "I need $5,000 in cash today," he said, casually, cutting into his eggs. "There is a client dinner tonight, and I need to cover the deposits. $5,000 for a dinner." I asked carefully, knowing that questioning him was dangerous territory. His fork paused midway to his mouth. "Are you questioning me?" "No," I said quickly, "but that seems like a lot for one dinner." "What kind of deposits?" He set his fork down, slowly, deliberately, his jaw tightening in that way that used to make me apologize immediately. "Danielle, I do not appreciate being interrogated about my business expenses. You know nothing about what it takes to maintain professional relationships at my level. I am not interrogating you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just think if it is that much money, maybe I should know what it is for." "You should know." His voice had dropped to that dangerous, quiet tone. "You who has not worked in 7 years, you who contributes nothing to this household financially, you think you have the right to question how I spend the money I earn. It is our money," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "And technically, some of it is mine. What about my grandmother's inheritance?" The silence that followed was deafening. His face went from red to white in seconds, and I knew I had crossed a line we had both pretended did not exist. He stood up slowly, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "What did you say? I know about the account, Marcus. I know you moved my inheritance into your private account. $200,000 that my grandmother left to me, not to us, to me." His mask finally slipped completely. "So what if I did? Who do you think has been paying for this house, your clothes, your food, everything you have for the past 7 years? That money is payment for services rendered. You are lucky I let you stay here at all. Let me stay here." "This is my home too?" "No," he said, walking around the table toward me. "This is my home that I allow you to live in. You own nothing. You are nothing without me, and if you think you can threaten me with some pathetic attempt at blackmail, you are even more stupid than I thought." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the credit card I had hidden for 3 months. "Actually, I have my own credit card now. I do not need your permission or your money anymore." He grabbed for it, but I held it tight. That was when he picked up his coffee mug, still steaming with fresh coffee I had poured minutes before, and threw it directly in my face. The coffee hit me with a pain I had never experienced before. 180-degree liquid splashed across my left cheek, my neck soaking into my shirt, burning through to skin. I gasped, stumbling backward, my hands instinctively going to my face. The mug shattered on the floor, ceramic pieces scattering across the kitchen tiles I had mopped just yesterday. Marcus sat back down, calmly picking up his fork again, as if nothing had happened. "You should clean yourself up," he said, taking another bite of eggs. "And then make me fresh coffee. This breakfast is getting cold because of your dramatics." I stood there for a moment, coffee dripping from my face onto the floor, watching him eat. Something fundamental shifted in that moment. The pain was extraordinary, yes, but it was also clarifying. For 12 years I had lived in fear of this man, but as I watched him casually return to his breakfast, I realized the worst had already happened. He had shown me exactly who he was, and there was no taking it back. Without a word, I walked to the downstairs bathroom, closing the door quietly behind me. My face in the mirror was already red and swelling where the coffee had hit. I took out the old phone hidden behind boxes of feminine products and took photo after photo, documenting every angle of the burn. Then I sent a simple message to Sarah. "It is time." Her response was immediate: "On my way. Stay safe." I cleaned my face gently with cool water, each touch sending fresh waves of pain through my skin. But underneath the pain was something else, something that felt like power. He had finally done something undeniable, something visible, something that could not be explained away or minimized. As I patted my face dry with a towel, I remembered all the other times, the ones that had not left marks anyone could see. The time he pushed me down the stairs and told the emergency room doctor I had tripped over the cat we did not have. The night he held me against the wall by my throat until I passed out, then convinced me I had experienced a panic attack from too much wine, even though I had only had 1 glass. The weekend he locked me in our bedroom for 2 days because I had smiled at the grocery store clerk, telling our neighbours I had the flu when they asked about the screaming they heard. Each incident had been followed by apologies, flowers, promises that it would never happen again. He would cry sometimes, telling me about his difficult childhood, his abusive father, how he was trying so hard to be better, and I would forgive him because I thought that was what love meant, standing by someone through their struggles, helping them heal. I did not understand then that I was not helping him heal. I was enabling him to wound me over and over again. But this morning was different. There were no tears, no apologies, no pretense of remorse. He had thrown boiling coffee in my face and then continued eating breakfast. The mask was completely off, and we both knew it. I heard him getting ready to leave for work, his routine as predictable as everything else in our controlled life. Keys jingling, briefcase clicking shut. Footsteps approaching the bathroom door. "I am leaving for the office," he said through the door, his voice carrying that false normalcy that had fooled me for so many years. "I will be home late tonight. There really is a client dinner." Have something ready for me when I get back. Maybe that salmon I like. And Danielle, we are going to have a long talk about your behaviour this morning. You need to remember your place in this household. I listened to his footsteps retreating the front door, opening and closing, the sound of his BMW starting in the driveway. Then came the familiar click of the deadbolt locking from the outside. He had been locking me in for the past 2 years, claiming it was for my safety while he was at work, but we both knew it was just another bar in my cage. What he did not know was that I had been practicing picking that lock for 6 months, with videos from the internet and tools ordered to Sarah's house. It usually took me about 3 minutes now, but I waited. I needed to be sure he was really gone. Not just sitting in the driveway, watching the house like he sometimes did to test me. 20 minutes after he left, my phone rang. It was Sarah calling from her car. I am around the corner with reinforcements, she said. Jennifer is with me and Monica too. We have everything we discussed. Are you hurt? Yes, but I am okay. He is gone for the day. The door is locked from outside. We brought tools for that. Give us 5 minutes. While I waited, I looked around the bathroom that had been my sanctuary for so many years, the only room in the house with a lock on the inside, the only place I could cry without him seeing, the only space where I could be alone with my thoughts. Hidden throughout this small room was evidence of my secret rebellion, the old phone behind the tampons, cash tucked inside an old medicine bottle, contact information for domestic violence hotlines written in tiny print on the back of a cleaning schedule. This room had kept my secrets safe while I planned my escape. The doorbell rang, followed by Sarah's voice calling out, "Danielle, it is us. We are coming in." I heard the sound of the lock being worked on, then the door opening. Footsteps rushed through the house, and then Sarah was there pulling me into a careful hug, mindful of my burned face. Behind her stood Jennifer, who had taken a vacation day from her job as an emergency room nurse to be here, and Monica, a retired police officer, who now worked as a domestic violence advocate. Jennifer immediately went into nurse mode, examining my burns with gentle efficiency. "Second-degree burns," she said. "We need to document these properly and get them treated. I have everything we need in my bag." Monica was already taking photographs with a professional camera. "These will hold up in court," she assured me. "The lighting and angles are important for evidence." Marcus picked the wrong group of women to mess with, while Jennifer tended to my burns and Monica documented everything. Sarah pulled out a tablet with a checklist she had created weeks ago when we started planning for this day. "We have 4 hours before he typically comes home for lunch to check on you," she said. "That is plenty of time if we stick to the plan." The plan we had carefully crafted included every detail of my escape. Sarah had researched divorce lawyers who specialised in financial abuse cases. Monica had connections with judges who understood domestic violence and would expedite restraining orders. Jennifer had arranged for me to stay at a safe house that was not in any system Marcus could access. My old friend from work, Patricia, had already spoken to HR about me returning to the company. Everyone had played a part in creating this safety net, while I gathered the courage to jump. "The moving truck is 3 blocks away," Sarah continued, checking items off her list. "Your storage unit is ready for anything you want to keep, but do not need immediately. The apartment is furnished and waiting. Your new bank account has the $8,000 you saved, plus the emergency fund we collected from everyone who wanted to help." I started crying then, overwhelmed by the army of women who had materialized to save me once I finally asked for help. For 7 years I had been isolated, convinced that no one cared that I had burned all my bridges. But one message to Sarah had activated a network of support I had not even known existed. We moved through the house with military precision. Important documents went into a fireproof box. Photo albums and family heirlooms were carefully packed. Jewellery my mother had given me was retrieved from hiding spots throughout the house. The designer clothes and expensive shoes Marcus had bought me to show off at his work events stayed behind. I only wanted things that were truly mine. In the home office, I showed them the hidden panel behind the bookshelf where Marcus kept his real financial documents, not the sanitized versions he showed me during our monthly budget reviews, where he explained why I needed to cut back on grocery spending. Monica photographed every page, while Sarah uploaded them to multiple secure cloud servers. The evidence showed not just the theft of my inheritance, but years of tax evasion embezzlement from his firm and offshore accounts that would destroy his career when exposed. At noon, Marcus called my cell phone. I looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly, then answered on speaker so Monica could record. "Why is the house alarm showing multiple entry alerts?" His voice was tight with suspicion. "I am having some friends over," I said calmly. "Is that a problem, friends?" "What friends? You do not have friends." "Actually, I do. And Marcus, we need to talk about something. Whatever it is can wait until tonight." "No, it cannot. Your credit cards have been frozen. The joint bank account is locked pending investigation. You might want to call your lawyer." The silence on the other end stretched for so long I thought he had hung up. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. "What have you done? I have taken back control of my life. There is a restraining order being processed as we speak. Do not come to the house. My belongings will be removed today. If you need clothes for your client dinner, I suggest you shop at the mall." "You stupid little bitch," he snarled, all pretense of civility gone. "You think you can leave me? You have nothing. You are nothing. I will destroy you in court. No one will believe you over me. Actually, they will believe the security cameras I installed 3 months ago, the ones that recorded you throwing coffee in my face this morning, the ones that captured audio of you admitting to stealing my inheritance, the ones that have documented every threat, every act of violence, every moment of abuse for the past 90 days. Another long silence, then a different tone, almost pleading. "Danielle, baby, let us talk about this. You know I love you. This morning was a mistake. I have been under so much stress at work. Come on, we can work this out." "We always do." "No, Marcus, we do not. You work it out by intimidating me into submission, but I am not afraid of you anymore. The papers will be filed by 5 today. Do not contact me again, except through lawyers." I hung up before he could respond, and immediately blocked his number. My hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady. Sarah squeezed my shoulder, and Jennifer gave me a small applause. 2 hours later, we were loading the last box when Marcus's BMW screeched into the driveway, ignoring the restraining order that had not been formally served yet. He stormed toward the house, but Monica stepped forward, her hand resting casually on her hip where she kept pepper spray. "Mr. Thompson," she said in her cop voice, calm but authoritative, "I am going to need you to step back. Mrs. Thompson is collecting her belongings, as is her legal right." "This is my house," he said, but his bravado faltered when he saw Monica's stance and noticed the neighbours watching from their windows. "You cannot just take things from my house." "Actually, she can take her personal belongings," Monica replied. "If you have an issue with what is being removed, you can address it through legal channels. Right now, you need to maintain a distance of at least 50 feet, or I will call my former colleagues who are already aware of this situation." Marcus looked past Monica to where I stood in the doorway, and for the first time in 12 years, I did not lower my eyes. I stared right back at him, letting him see that his victim was gone, and a survivor stood in her place. Marcus stood there in his expensive suit, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. The man who had controlled every aspect of my life for over a decade was reduced to watching helplessly as I reclaimed my freedom box by box. His jaw clenched and unclenched as he processed the reality that his power over me had evaporated. "You are making a huge mistake, Danielle," he called out his voice, carrying across the lawn where several neighbours had found reasons to be outside. "You will never survive without me. Who is going to take care of you, pay your bills? You cannot even balance a checkbook." "I can learn," I called back, my voice stronger than it had been in years. "Just like I learned to survive you." Jennifer emerged from the house carrying my grandmother's china, the set Marcus had forbidden me to use because it was too valuable for everyday dining. She loaded it carefully into her SUV while making direct eye contact with Marcus, daring him to object. Behind her, Sarah wheeled out my suitcases, the ones I had not used since our honeymoon, when Marcus decided I no longer needed to travel. More neighbours had appeared now, the Johnsons from next door, the Martinez family from across the street, even elderly Mrs. Chen, who rarely left her house. They watched as my possessions were loaded into vehicles, their presence a silent witness that Marcus could not intimidate or control. His phone rang and his face went white as he listened. He turned away, but I could still hear fragments of his conversation. "What do you mean, frozen? All of them. That is impossible. She does not have the authority." But I did have the authority, thanks to the forensic accountant Sarah's lawyer had recommended. With the evidence of financial fraud and theft, a judge had issued an emergency asset freeze that morning. Every account Marcus controlled was now locked pending investigation. The credit cards he used to maintain his image, the investment accounts built with my stolen inheritance, even his precious BMW would be repossessed if it turned out he had purchased it with embezzled funds. "Mr. Thompson," Monica said, checking her watch, "the restraining order will be formally served within the hour. I strongly suggest you leave now and contact your attorney." "This is not over," he said, but the threat sounded hollow. He looked at me one more time, and I saw something I had never seen before in his eyes. Fear. He was afraid of me, of what I knew, of what I could do with that knowledge. "You are right," I said. "It is not over. It is just beginning. But your part in my story is finished." He stood there for another moment, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to say something more, but no words came. Finally, he turned and walked back to his car, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As he drove away, Mrs. Chen started clapping. Then the Johnsons joined in, and the Martinez children cheered. The whole neighbourhood was applauding my escape. Sarah put her arm around me as we watched his car disappear around the corner. "You did it," she said. "You really did it. We all did it," I corrected, looking at the women who had risked their own safety to help me. Marcus had counted on my isolation, but he had underestimated the power of women who support each other. The safe house Jennifer had arranged was a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a building with security cameras and a doorman who took his job seriously. It was furnished simply but comfortably with everything I needed to start over. The refrigerator was stocked, the closets had hangers, there were even fresh flowers on the kitchen table with a note, "Welcome to your new beginning." That first night alone was surreal. I kept waiting for the door to burst open for Marcus to appear with that dangerous smile and explain how stupid I had been to think I could leave. But the door remained closed, locked from the inside by my own hand. I had control over who entered my space for the first time in years. Sarah stayed with me for the first week, sleeping on the couch, even though I offered her the second bedroom. She said she wanted to be close in case I had nightmares, but I think she was also afraid I might change my mind and go back. She did not need to worry. The woman who might have returned to Marcus had died the moment that coffee hit my face. Someone new had been born in that pain. Someone who understood that staying would eventually mean dying either physically or spiritually. The legal proceedings moved faster than expected. Helen Martinez, the lawyer Sarah had found, was a force of nature in designer heels and power suits. She specialized in high-conflict divorces involving domestic abuse and financial crimes. When she saw the evidence we had collected, she actually smiled. "This is one of the most well-documented cases I have seen," she said, spreading the files across her conference table. "The video evidence alone is damning, but combined with the financial fraud, Marcus Thompson is going to wish he had never met you." She was right. Marcus had hired the most expensive law firm in Philadelphia, but even they could not spin the evidence in his favor. The security footage of him throwing coffee in my face was played in court, and I watched the judge's expression harden as she observed his casual return to breakfast afterward. The forensic accounting revealed he had stolen not just my inheritance, but had also embezzled nearly $500,000 from his firm over the past 5 years. His colleagues abandoned him immediately. The senior partners who had attended our dinner parties and praised him as their rising star suddenly claimed they had always sensed something was off about him. His golf buddies stopped returning his calls. The country club revoked his membership. The facade of success he had built crumbled within weeks. During the divorce proceedings, unexpected allies emerged. Marcus's secretary, Linda, testified about the controlling phone calls she had witnessed, the times he had her track my credit card usage, the occasions he had bragged about keeping me in line. She apologized to me afterward with tears in her eyes, saying she should have said something sooner, but had been afraid for her job. Even more surprising was when Claire appeared. Marcus's first wife, whom he had told me was crazy and vindictive, turned out to be a successful pediatrician who had her own story of survival. She had documentation from their marriage 15 years ago showing the same patterns of control and abuse. She had not come forward before because she had moved on, built a new life, and did not want to revisit that trauma. But when she heard about my case, she felt compelled to help. Marcus used the same playbook with you, she told me, over coffee. Isolation, financial control, gaslighting, occasional violence, followed by grand apologies. You lasting 12 years shows incredible strength. I only made it through 5 before I ran. The preliminary hearing was a massacre for Marcus's defense. The judge, a woman named Patricia Hernandez, who had a reputation for seeing through manipulation tactics, reviewed the evidence with meticulous attention. She watched the security videos, examined the financial records, and listened to the testimony with an expression that grew increasingly stern. When Marcus's lawyer tried to argue that the coffee incident was an isolated event caused by stress, Judge Hernandez actually laughed. "Counsel," she said, "I have reviewed 3 months of security footage showing a clear pattern of coercive control and escalating violence. Your client's stress does not excuse criminal behavior. The fact that he returned to eating breakfast after assaulting his wife shows a callous disregard that frankly turns my stomach." She ordered Marcus to return my entire inheritance plus interest, awarded me 70% of the marital assets, and required him to pay all legal fees for both parties. She also recommended criminal charges be filed for assault and financial fraud. The restraining order was extended indefinitely. Marcus tried to speak directly to me as we left the courtroom, but Monica and 2 security guards immediately stepped between us. All I heard was him saying my name over and over, his voice breaking with what might have been genuine emotion for the first time in our relationship, but it was too late for genuine anything. The news of his downfall spread quickly through Philadelphia's legal community. The State Bar Association opened an investigation into his conduct. His firm not only fired him, but also sued him for the embezzled funds. Criminal charges were filed and his assets were frozen, completely pending the investigation. The man who had controlled every penny I spent was now unable to access his own money without court approval. Meanwhile, my life was expanding in ways I had forgotten were possible. Patricia from my old company had not only advocated for my return, but had created a position specifically for me. Senior Marketing Director with a salary of $120,000 a year, $15,000 more than I had been making when I left. My first day back, the entire team welcomed me with a standing ovation. They had all heard what happened, and instead of judgment, I found only support. My family, whom I had pushed away for so long, rallied around me with fierce protectiveness. My mother flew in from Florida and stayed for a month cooking my favorite meals and holding me while I cried out 12 years of suppressed tears. She blamed herself for not seeing the signs, for accepting Marcus's explanations for my absence at family events, for not pushing harder when I seemed to disappear from their lives. You tried to tell me, she said one evening as we looked through old photos. Remember Christmas 3 years ago when you said you felt trapped? I thought you meant in the suburbs, not in your marriage. I should have listened better. My sister Jennifer took a leave from her job in California to stay with me during the criminal trial. She slept in my bed like when we were children, holding my hand through nightmares where Marcus found me and dragged me back. She also introduced me to her therapist colleague who specialized in PTSD from domestic abuse. Therapy was harder than I expected. Doctor. Amanda Wright was kind but uncompromising in making me confront the reality of what had happened. For the first session, I minimized everything using phrases like, "It was not that bad," and "he had a difficult childhood too." She listened patiently, then asked a simple question that shattered my defenses. Danielle, if your sister or best friend told you their husband threw boiling coffee in their face, would you tell them it was not that bad? The criminal trial took place 6 months after I left. By then, Marcus was a shadow of his former self. His expensive suits had been replaced with a public defender's recommendations. His perfect hair was unkempt. The confident swagger that had once intimidated me was gone. He looked like what he had always been beneath the surface, a small, angry man who needed to control others to feel powerful. The prosecution presented their case methodically. The security videos played on a large screen showing incident after incident. The financial crimes were detailed with charts and graphs that made the jury's eyes widen at the scope of his theft. Character witnesses testified about the man they thought they knew versus the one revealed by evidence. When I took the stand, Marcus tried to make eye contact, maybe hoping to trigger the fear response he had cultivated for so long, but I looked right through him to Sarah and Jennifer and Monica, sitting in the gallery, my army of supporters, who had taught me that I was worth saving. I testified for 3 hours, detailing the progression from love bombing to isolation to control to violence. The prosecutor asked about specific incidents, and I described them without emotion, facts laid bare for judgment. The defense attorney tried to trip me up, suggesting I had provoked the attacks or exaggerated the abuse, but I had truth on my side, and truth does not waver under pressure. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. Assault, battery, financial fraud, embezzlement, theft. Marcus was sentenced to 2 years in prison, 5 years probation, and ordered to pay $500,000 in restitution. He was also disbarred, ending his legal career permanently. As the bailiff led him away in handcuffs, Marcus looked back at me one last time. His lips moved, forming words I could not hear over the commotion in the courtroom. Later, the court reporter told me he had said he was sorry, but sorry was just another word by then, meaningless, after years of weaponized apologies. The first anniversary of the coffee incident arrived on a Monday morning, exactly 1 year after my life split into before and after. I woke up in my own apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom I had purchased with the settlement money, and made myself coffee without fear. The burn scar on my cheek had faded to a faint pink line that makeup could cover, but I rarely bothered hiding it anymore. It was part of my story, evidence of both my trauma and survival. My morning routine was my own now. Coffee, however I liked it. Breakfast when I felt hungry, clothes chosen for comfort rather than his approval. I worked from home on Mondays, a flexibility my company provided that Marcus would have never allowed. The dining table where I sat with my laptop overlooked a small park where mothers pushed children on swings and dogs chased frisbees. Normal life happening right outside my window, a life I was finally part of again. At 9, I logged into a video call with my team. As creative director, a promotion I had earned 6 months after returning, I led strategic campaigns for major pharmaceutical brands. My colleagues respected my insights, valued my experience, and never once asked about the slight scar visible on camera. They knew my story, most of Philadelphia's business community did after the trial coverage, but they treated me as a professional, not a victim. After work, I drove to the community centre where I now volunteered twice a week. The Breaking Free Foundation had started small, just me and Sarah and a few others pooling resources to help women escape abusive situations. But word spread, donations came in, and now we operated out of a proper office with paid staff and comprehensive services. Today was intake day, when new clients came for initial consultations. I sat across from a woman named Beth, whose story echoed mine so closely it made my chest tight. The financial control, the isolation, the escalating violence hidden behind a perfect suburban facade. She clutched her purse like a lifeline, eyes darting to the door every few minutes, as if her husband might materialize. He monitors everything she whispered: bank accounts, credit cards, phone, email. I cannot even buy groceries without him knowing exactly what I purchased. How did you get out? I told her about the secret credit card, the hidden phone, the network of women who helped me escape. I showed her the faint scar on my cheek and explained how that moment of violence had become my catalyst for freedom. I gave her the same advice Sarah had given me a year ago. You do not have to leave today or tomorrow or even next month, but start preparing. Document everything, build your support network, and know that when you are ready, we will be here. She cried then, the kind of deep, exhausted tears that come from carrying fear for too long. I handed her tissues and resources phone numbers, written on business cards that looked innocuous websites, bookmarked on a burner phone we provided. We would not save her, that was not how it worked, but we would give her the tools to save herself when she was ready. After the foundation, I met Sarah and Jennifer for dinner at our regular Tuesday spot. Over the past year, these dinners had become sacred, a weekly celebration of freedom and friendship. Sarah was now the foundation's legal coordinator, having left her corporate job to do work that mattered. Jennifer had moved back from California, taking a position at a local hospital to be closer. Monica joined us sometimes, sharing war stories from her police days and updates on the women we were helping. Tonight, she arrived with news that made us all cheer. Marcus had been denied early release. His behavior in prison, attempting to manipulate other inmates and guards, had shown he was not rehabilitated. He would serve his full sentence. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: Sarah's new boyfriend, who actually respected boundaries; Jennifer's promotion to head nurse; my upcoming book deal about surviving domestic abuse. We laughed more than we talked about trauma, now proof that healing was possible, that life existed beyond survival mode. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store, something that still felt like a small miracle. For 7 years, grocery shopping had required permission, a detailed list, exact change, and receipts to be reviewed. Now I wandered the aisles freely, buying things just because they looked interesting. Expensive cheese Marcus would have called wasteful, fresh flowers he would have deemed unnecessary, a bottle of wine he would have monitored me drinking. In the parking lot, I encountered a ghost. Marcus's mother Eleanor was loading bags into her Mercedes. We had not spoken since the divorce. She had publicly supported her son, claiming I was a gold digger who had framed him. But here in the fluorescent lighting of the parking lot, she looked older, smaller, tired. Danielle, she said my name, barely a whisper. I could have walked away, but something made me stop. Hello, Eleanor. She looked at my face, her eyes lingering on the faint scar. Then she did something unexpected. She started crying. I am sorry, she said. I knew. Deep down, I knew what he was capable of. His father was the same way with me. I should have warned you. I should have helped you. I stood there frozen between anger and pity. This woman had watched her son become his father and done nothing to stop it. But she had also been a victim herself, trapped in her own cycle of abuse that she had normalized so thoroughly she could not see it repeating. It is not your fault, I said, meaning it, but it was not mine either. She nodded, wiping her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I know that now. I have been seeing someone, a therapist. She is helping me understand how I enabled him, how I failed both of you. We stood there awkwardly, two women bound by trauma inflicted by the same man. There was nothing more to say, really. Some relationships were too broken to repair, some wounds too deep to fully heal. But acknowledgement mattered. Recognition of harm done mattered. "Take care of yourself, Eleanor," I said, pushing my cart toward my car. "You too," she replied. "And Danielle, you are the strongest woman I know. What you did took incredible courage." No, I thought as I drove away. It did not take incredible courage. It took desperation and coffee burns and the realization that staying meant dying slowly. Courage came later. The rebuilding, in learning to trust again, in helping other women find their own escape routes. A month later, I was preparing for my first major speaking engagement, a conference on domestic violence awareness with 500 attendees. My hands shook as I reviewed my notes, the imposter syndrome whispering that I had no business teaching others about survival. Then I looked at the messages from women who had already escaped because of our foundation's help. 37 women in 1 year, each one a testament that sharing our stories mattered. The morning of the conference, I stood before the mirror applying makeup. The scar was barely visible now, but I stopped before covering it completely. This mark was not something to hide. It was evidence of the moment I chose myself over my fear. I put the concealer away and wore the scar like a badge of honor. The conference room was packed. Lawyers, social workers, healthcare providers, law enforcement all gathered to learn about recognizing and responding to domestic abuse. I stood at the podium looking out at hundreds of faces, waiting for wisdom I was not sure I possessed. Then I saw them in the third row. Sarah, Jennifer, Monica, my mother Eve and Claire Marcus's first wife. My support system reminding me I was not alone. "My name is Danielle Thompson," I began, my voice steady. 1 year ago, my husband threw scalding coffee in my face when I refused to give him my credit card. That moment of violence became my freedom because it showed me clearly what I had been too afraid to admit. Love should not hurt. Control is not care. Fear is not respect. I spoke for 45 minutes, weaving together statistics with personal narrative research, with lived experience. I explained the cycle of abuse, the tactics of control, the insidious nature of financial abuse. I showed them the security footage of the coffee incident, hearing gasps from the audience as Marcus calmly returned to his breakfast. "This is what domestic violence actually looks like," I said. "Not always dramatic fights or visible bruises. Sometimes it is a man eating eggs while his wife cleans coffee burns from her face. Sometimes it is asking permission to buy groceries with your own money. Sometimes it is being locked in your house for your own safety." The question and answer session lasted another hour. Healthcare providers wanted to know what signs to look for. Lawyers asked about documentation strategies. Social workers inquired about safe exit planning. Each question reminded me that awareness was spreading, that professionals were learning to see what had been hidden in plain sight for so long. After the conference, a young woman approached me nervously. She waited until others had left before speaking. "My husband does things like that," she said quietly. "Not coffee, but other things. Controlling things. Scary things. I thought it was normal until I heard you speak. What do I do?" I gave her my card, the Foundation's 24-hour hotline number, and the same advice I gave every woman who approached me. You do not have to decide everything today. Just start documenting, start planning, start believing you deserve better, because you do. 6 months later, I received an email from her. She had left, was safe, was rebuilding. "Your story saved my life," she wrote. "Thank you for being brave enough to share it." But I had not been brave, not at first. I had been terrified, broken, barely surviving. Bravery came later in small increments. The first time I went to the grocery store alone. The first time I said no without apologizing. The first time I looked in the mirror and liked who I saw. Bravery was not the absence of fear, but moving forward despite it. 2 years after the coffee incident, I sat in a different coffee shop waiting for someone. Through the window, I watched Philadelphia's business district bustle with lunch hour energy. Men in suits like Marcus used to wear women in heels like I used to force myself into. But now I saw the performance of it all. The masks people wore, the roles they played. Daniel arrived right on time, apologizing for being 30 seconds late, even though he was not. He was a counselor at the therapy center, where I had received treatment, someone who understood trauma because he worked with it daily. We had started as friends, bonding over coffee and conversations about healing. Slowly, carefully, with respect for my boundaries and patience for my triggers, it had become something more. He ordered tea, not coffee, knowing that the smell of hot coffee still sometimes made me flinch. These small considerations mattered more than grand gestures. He never walked behind me suddenly, always announced himself. He never raised his voice, even in laughter. He understood that love, after abuse, required a different kind of courtship, one built on safety and consistency rather than passion and surprises. We talked about the Foundation's new shelter opening next month, the book tour starting in the fall, his patient's progress, our plans for a weekend trip to the mountains. Normal conversation between two people building something together. He reached across the table to hold my hand, and I did not flinch. Progress measured in small touches that felt safe rather than threatening. Later, walking through the park, we passed the bench where I had sat 2 years ago planning my escape while pretending to read. The woman on that bench felt like a stranger, now someone I remembered but no longer was. That version of me had been so focused on survival, she could not imagine thriving. But here I was, hand in hand with a good man, surrounded by friends, doing work that mattered, living a life that was entirely my own. That evening, I stood in my kitchen making dinner for friends. Sarah was bringing wine, Jennifer was making her famous salad, Monica was picking up dessert. Daniel was in the living room setting up a board game that would probably end with Monica accusing everyone of cheating while we all laughed. This chosen family had replaced the isolation Marcus had imposed, proving that connection was possible after betrayal. As I stirred the pasta sauce, my phone buzzed with a notification. Marcus would be released next month, his 2-year sentence completed. The news that would have once terrified me now felt distant, irrelevant. He had no power over me anymore. The restraining order was permanent. His career was destroyed, his reputation ruined. He was the one who had lost everything while I had gained a life worth living. I thought about sending him a message through his lawyer, not to reconcile or forgive, but to let him know that his worst act against me had become my greatest gift. The coffee he threw in my face had washed away my fear and revealed my strength. But then I decided he did not deserve even that acknowledgement. My success was not about him anymore. My survival story had evolved into a thriving story, and he was just a footnote in my history. The book tour began 3 months after Marcus's release, though the timing was coincidental rather than planned. My memoir, titled After the Burn, A Journey from Victim to Victor, had exceeded all expectations, hitting bestseller lists and generating interview requests from major media outlets. The girl who had once needed permission to leave the house was now traveling the country, sharing her story with thousands. Each city brought new faces, but familiar stories. Women approached me at every signing, whispering their truths while I signed their books. Men sometimes came too, sharing their own experiences of abuse that society told them not to talk about. Parents asked how to protect their children from entering relationships like mine. The patterns were universal, crossing all demographics and economic levels. In Chicago, a woman handed me a business card with her escape date written on the back. 2 weeks after your Cleveland event, she said with tears streaming, "Your story gave me the courage to finally leave." In Denver, a young man waited until everyone else had left before approaching. My boyfriend controls everything, he said quietly, but when I try to tell people, they laugh because I am bigger than him. They do not understand that abuse is not about physical strength. In Seattle, 3 generations of women from the same family stood in line together. The grandmother spoke first. 50 years, she said simply. I stayed for 50 years. My daughter stayed for 20. But my granddaughter here, she got out after 2 because she recognized the signs. We all read your book together. 3 generations breaking the cycle. These moments made the exhaustion of travel worth it. Every story shared meant someone else might recognize their situation sooner, might leave before the violence escalated, might understand that abuse was not love, no matter how much their abuser insisted otherwise. Between tour stops, I managed the foundation, which had grown beyond anything we had imagined. We now operated 3 shelters, provided free legal services, offered therapy and job training, and had helped over 200 women escape abusive situations. Corporate sponsors had emerged, understanding that supporting abuse survivors was not just moral but practical, since domestic violence cost businesses billions in lost productivity and employee turnover. During a brief break between tours, I returned to Philadelphia for the Foundation's annual gala. The event that had started as a small fundraiser in Sarah's backyard had evolved into a major social event with 500 attendees and corporate sponsorships that funded our operations for the entire year. I stood at the podium in a dress I had chosen myself, addressing a room full of supporters, survivors, and changemakers. Behind me, a screen showed photos from our shelters, testimonials from women we had helped, statistics about our impact. But I knew the most powerful tool was still personal story, the individual narrative that made abstract concepts real. 3 years ago, I began, my husband threw coffee in my face for refusing to give him my credit card. Today, I stand here as proof that there is life after abuse, that leaving is possible, that thriving is achievable. But I did not do it alone. No one escapes abuse alone. It takes a network of village, an army of supporters who believe survivors and provide practical help. The applause was warm but unnecessary. These people were already believers, already supporters. The real work happened in smaller rooms, in quiet conversations, in the moment someone realized they deserved better and took the first step toward freedom. After my speech, I mingled with guests, thanking donors and hugging survivors. Near the bar, a familiar figure caught my eye. Marcus's former law partner, Richard Sterling, stood with a whiskey in hand, looking uncomfortable but determined. He had testified during the trial about missing funds, but we had not spoken since. Danielle, he said, approaching carefully. I wanted to apologize. We all knew something was off about Marcus, the way he talked about you, the control he exhibited. We should have said something, done something. We were cowards. You were his colleagues, not my protectors, I replied. But thank you for eventually telling the truth. That mattered. He nodded, then pulled out a check that made my eyes widen. The firm wants to support your foundation. We cannot undo our silence, but we can help prevent future harm. The donation was substantial enough to fund an entire shelter for a year. I accepted it not as personal vindication, but as resource for women who needed help. Money had no moral alignment. It was a tool, and I would use any tool available to help others escape. As the gala wound down, Danielle found me on the balcony where I had stepped out for air. The city sparkled below us, thousands of lights in windows representing lives I knew nothing about. Somewhere in those lights were women planning their escapes, gathering courage, documenting abuse. Somewhere were women who had already left rebuilding in their own apartments, learning to trust again. You did good tonight, Danielle said, wrapping his jacket around my shoulders. We did good, I corrected. None of this exists without the team. He smiled, understanding that I still struggled with accepting individual praise. Recovery included learning to own accomplishments without minimizing them, but old habits died hard. Marcus had trained me to deflect attention, to stay small, to credit others for my work. Unlearning those lessons took daily practice. My phone vibrated with a news alert. Marcus had been arrested again, this time for attempting to violate the restraining order by hiring a private investigator to follow me. The investigator, it turned out, was an undercover cop conducting a sting operation based on tips from Marcus's probation officer. He would go back to prison this time for longer. I showed Danielle the alert, waiting to feel something. Relief, vindication, maybe even pity. But there was nothing except mild annoyance that his name was intruding on my evening. He had become truly irrelevant to my daily life, a problem being handled by the system rather than my personal concern. The next morning brought unexpected news from a different source. Eleanor Marcus's mother had passed away overnight from a heart attack. Despite our complicated history, I felt genuine sadness. She had been trapped in her own cycle of abuse, never finding the strength or support to break free. Her death meant she would never experience the freedom I had found, the joy of living without fear. I attended the funeral, sitting in the back row, with Sarah for support. Marcus was not there, could not be there from prison. The service was small, mostly elderly friends from her church and book club. The eulogy painted her as devoted mother and wife, never mentioning the bruises she had hidden for 40 years, or the son who had continued his father's legacy of violence. After the service, her sister approached me. "She wanted you to have this," she said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter in Eleanor's shaky handwriting. "Dear Danielle, if you are reading this, I am gone, and you are free. I am sorry I could not protect you from my son. I saw myself in you, trapped and afraid, but I was too broken to help. The enclosed check is from my personal account. Marcus never knew about. Use it to help other women find the freedom I never could. With regret and admiration, Eleanor." The check was for $100,000. Money hidden from her husband and son for decades, squirreled away, dollar by dollar, waiting for a courage that never came. Now it would fund freedom for others, Eleanor's final act of rebellion against the men who had controlled her. That afternoon, I sat in my office at the foundation, looking at Eleanor's check and thinking about cycles, how abuse passed from generation to generation until someone found the strength to break the pattern, how victims became survivors, became advocates, became warriors, how one moment of violence could catalyze a revolution, first personal, then communal. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Beth, the woman from my first day volunteering, stood in the doorway. But she looked different now, stronger, steadier, wearing clothes she had chosen rather than ones selected for her. She had left 6 months ago and was rebuilding beautifully. "I wanted to tell you in person," she said, smiling genuinely. "I got the job. Marketing manager at that tech startup. They loved my portfolio, the one I had been working on secretly for years. I start Monday." I hugged her, remembering my own first job interview after leaving, how my hands had shaken as I explained the gap in my resume without revealing too much. Beth had been braver telling her truth up front, and the right company had recognized her strength rather than seeing her as damaged goods. That evening, I returned home to find a package on my doorstep with no return address. Inside was a single coffee mug and a note. "You should have just given me the credit card." My blood ran cold for a moment before logic kicked in. Marcus was in prison. This was meant to frighten me, to pull me back into that space of fear where he had kept me for so long. Instead, I photographed everything, called the police, and added it to the file that would extend his sentence even further. Daniel arrived while the officers were still there, having received my text. He did not panic or overreact, just stood steady beside me as I gave my statement. Later, after the police left, he helped me make dinner as if nothing had happened, understanding that normalcy was what I needed, not drama or excessive comfort. We have that interview tomorrow, he reminded me, referring to the joint appearance on a morning show where we would discuss trauma-informed relationships. The producers wanted the story of how love was possible after abuse, how trust could be rebuilt, how someone could learn to accept healthy love after surviving toxic control. I knew the questions they would ask. How did you know he was different? Were not you afraid to trust again? What advice would you give to survivors entering new relationships? The answers were complex, nuanced, without the neat resolution television preferred. But I would try to convey that healing was not linear, that trust was built slowly, that healthy love felt frighteningly calm compared to the intensity of abuse. 3 years and 6 months after the coffee incident, I stood in front of another mirror preparing for another speech. This time it was the National Conference on Domestic Violence Prevention, and I was the keynote speaker. 5,000 people would hear my story, but more importantly, they would hear the stories of survival I had collected, the victories our foundation had facilitated, the proof that change was possible. The scar on my cheek was now barely visible, requiring close inspection to notice. Sometimes I forgot it was there until catching my reflection at a certain angle in certain light. It had become like Marcus himself, a fading mark from a past that no longer defined my present. My phone rang just as I was leaving for the conference, an unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Is this Danielle Thompson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is she. My name is Amanda. You do not know me, but I am dating Marcus's former colleague. He has been showing signs, controlling things, scary things. I Googled his name and found your story. Can we talk?" "Of course," I said, sitting back down. "Tell me what is happening." For the next hour, I listened to another woman describe the early warning signs I had missed in my own relationship. The checking her phone, the complaints about her friends, the sudden anger over small things, the financial questions that seemed caring, but were actually reconnaissance. I gave her the same advice I gave everyone, tailored to her specific situation, and connected her with local resources. After the call, I sat in my car for a moment, overwhelmed by the realization that my story had ripple effects I would never fully know. Every woman who left because of something I shared, every man who recognized his own abusive behavior and sought help, every friend who learned to spot warning signs in their loved ones' relationships. The coffee burns had become a catalyst for change far beyond my own life. The conference went beautifully. I shared the stage with researchers, law enforcement officials, and other survivors. We painted a comprehensive picture of domestic abuse, from the academic understanding to the lived experience to the systemic responses needed. The audience was engaged, asking thoughtful questions, taking notes that would influence policies and procedures across the country. But the moment that stayed with me happened after the official program ended. A group of teenage girls approached high school students whose teacher had brought them to learn about healthy relationships. One girl, probably 17, asked the question that cut straight to the heart of everything. How do you know if love is real or if it is just control pretending to be love? I thought about Marcus bringing me flowers after every violent incident, the expensive gifts that came with invisible strings, the declarations of love that preceded new restrictions, the promises that things would change that only meant I would have to change more. Real love makes you feel free, not trapped, I told her. It expands your world rather than shrinking it. It celebrates your independence rather than fearing it. It trusts rather than monitors. It supports your growth rather than limiting it. And most importantly, real love never requires you to become smaller to receive it. She nodded, typing notes into her phone. Her generation would have advantages mine did not. More awareness, better resources, technology that could be used for safety rather than just surveillance. But they would also face new challenges. Digital abuse. We were only beginning to understand online harassment that followed victims everywhere. As I drove home from the conference, I thought about the journey from that morning 3 years ago to now. The woman who had sat at her kitchen table, coffee burning her face, afraid to move, was gone. In her place was someone I had never imagined becoming: an advocate, an author, a speaker, a leader, a survivor who had transformed survival into purpose. But more than any title or achievement, I was simply free. Free to make choices without permission. Free to exist without fear. Free to love without losing myself. Free to help others find their own freedom. The coffee stain was gone from my table and my life. In its place was a foundation built on truth, supported by community, and strong enough to shelter anyone who needed it. That night, I sat on my couch with Danielle, Sarah, and Jennifer, watching some ridiculous reality show that made us all laugh. Monica texted complaints about her date, who had tried to explain her own job to her. My mother called to say she had bought 20 copies of my book to give to everyone in her retirement community. Normal life chosen family, simple joy. The news played in the background, a story about another domestic violence case making headlines, the cycle continuing elsewhere while we had broken it here. I thought about sending a message to that woman, letting her know she was not alone, that survival was possible, that there was life after the burn. But then I realized she would find her own army, her own moment of clarity, her own path to freedom. And when she did, we would be here ready to help, because that is what survivors do. We survive, we thrive, and then we turn around and help others do the same. Have you or someone you know experienced controlling behavior in a relationship? What warning signs do you wish you had recognized sooner? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, as your story might help someone else recognize their situation. If this message resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that leaving is possible, that life after abuse exists, that they are not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, love should never hurt. Control is not care, and you deserve a life free from fear. If you are in danger, please reach out for help. You are stronger than you know, and freedom is possible, one brave moment at a time.